That's how he saw her with Marcus. They were at a cafe near the gallery, sitting outside despite the October chill. Elena was laughing at something Marcus had said, her face lit up with genuine joy. The artist leaned forward to show her something on his phone, and their shoulders touched. It was casual. Innocent. But Adrian felt it like a knife to the chest. She had moved on. She was happy. She was with someone who made her laugh the way he used to before he had forgotten how. Adrian watched them for a moment longer, then turned and walked away. He had no right to interfere with her happiness. He had lost that right when he had taken her for granted. But the pain was unbearable. The confession. That night, Adrian wrote his last letter. The one that said everything he had been too afraid to say. Elena. This will be my last letter. I'm leaving Paris tomorrow. Not because I want to, but because I can see that you're moving on, and I won't be the obstacle that stops you from being happy. I saw you today with someone. An artist, I think. You were laughing. You looked so happy that it hurt to watch, but in a good way. Because you deserve that happiness. You deserve someone who will cherish every moment with you. I wish I had been that someone. I wish I had appreciated what I had while I had it. But I didn't, and now I have to live with that regret for the rest of my life. I want you to know that loving you was the best thing I ever did. And losing you was entirely my fault. If I could go back, I would change everything. I would answer every call. I would remember every anniversary. I would quit every meeting to be with you. I would tell you every day how extraordinary you are. But I can't go back. So instead, I'll tell you this. You were never the quiet wife in the background. You were the light that made everything else worth seeing. I was just too blind to notice. She was manipulating me, keeping me distracted, keeping me away from you. It doesn't excuse my actions. I should have been smarter. I should have prioritized you. But I thought you should know that someone was actively working to destroy our marriage. I fired her. Ended our business partnership. The Singapore deal fell through because of it, and I don't care. Some things are more important than money. Elena read that letter twice, trying to process the information. Part of her felt vindicated. She had known Victoria was a threat. But part of her felt sad because Adrian should have seen it himself. Should have protected their marriage without needing to find evidence of betrayal. Marcus. Elena met Marcus at a Sunday market in Montmartre. She was browsing through vintage books when she heard a voice behind her. Ah, you have excellent taste. Baudelaire is perfect for autumn in Paris. She turned to find a man about her age, with kind brown eyes and paint-stained fingers, smiling at her over a stack of poetry books. I'm more of a Verlaine person myself, Elena replied, surprising herself by engaging. Even better. His smile widened. I'm Marcus. Artist, book collector, and apparently terrible at subtlety because I've been trying to find a reason to talk to you for the last 10 minutes. Elena laughed, and it felt good. Easy. I'm Elena. Gallery curator, book lover, and apparently oblivious to being watched. They spent the next 3 hours wandering through the market, talking about art and literature and Paris. Marcus made her laugh without trying too hard. He listened when she spoke. He saw her. When they parted ways, he asked for her number. And for the first time since leaving New York, Elena gave it. Adrian sees her moving on. Adrian had been staying at a hotel in Paris, unable to bring himself to leave even though Elena hadn't responded to any of his letters. He had taken to walking past the gallery just to catch glimpses of her, pathetic as it was. No, that's not right. I didn't forget you. I took you for granted. I assumed you would always be there, waiting in the shadows, content to be invisible. I was wrong about everything. I've spent 6 months thinking about our marriage, about all the ways I failed you. The dinners I missed. The conversations I didn't have. The dreams I never asked about. You gave up your career for me, your friends, your independence. And what did I give you in return? An empty penthouse and a husband who couldn't even remember your anniversary. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve the chance to apologize in person. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see everything I missed. I see the woman I was too blind to appreciate. You were never invisible, Elena. I was just too stupid to open my eyes. Adrian. Elena's hands trembled as she finished reading. She wanted to be angry, wanted to rip the letter to shreds. But instead, she found tears on her cheeks. The letters kept coming. One every morning, slipped under her door before dawn. Each one a confession, a memory, a realization of what he had lost. He wrote about the time she had organized a surprise party for his birthday, and he had been 2 hours late because of a meeting. About the gallery opening she had wanted to attend, and he had dismissed as unimportant. About the vacation to Greece she had planned, and he had cancelled at the last minute. Every small hurt. Every quiet disappointment. Every moment when she had needed him and he hadn't been there. He remembered them all now. Too late, but he remembered. The investigation. Adrian's letters revealed more than just his regrets. They revealed the truth about Victoria. I found emails, one letter read. Victoria had been deliberately scheduling meetings during our important dates. She knew about our anniversary and booked the Singapore dinner that exact night. She knew about the Greece trip and created a crisis that required my immediate attention. She forced herself to turn slowly, to meet his eyes with polite indifference. I'm sorry, do I know you? He flinched as if she had struck him. Elena, please. I'm afraid you have me confused with someone else. Her voice was cool, professional. If you'll excuse me, I have guests to attend to. She started to walk away, but his hand caught her wrist gently. The touch sent electricity up her arm, and she hated her body for still responding to him. I flew to Paris every weekend for the last 3 months, Adrian said quietly, visiting every gallery, every museum, every art exhibition, hoping I might find you. Then you wasted your time. Elena pulled her wrist free. The woman you're looking for doesn't exist anymore. I can see that. His eyes traced her face, cataloging every small change. You look happy. I am happy. Good. You deserve to be happy. He swallowed hard. Elena, I need to talk to you. Please. Give me 5 minutes. I gave you 3 years, Adrian. You don't get 5 more minutes. She walked away, and this time he didn't try to stop her. But she could feel his eyes on her for the rest of the evening, a weight she couldn't shake. The apology letters. The next morning, Elena found the first letter slipped under her apartment door. She recognized the handwriting immediately and almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity got the better of her. She opened it standing in her doorway, prepared to skim and discard. Elena. I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I have no right to intrude on the life you've built. But I need you to know some things, even if you never forgive me. I found the hospital records. I know what happened that night. I know I ignored your calls while you were dying. I know I wasn't there when you needed me most. There is no excuse for what I did. No justification. I was so consumed by work, by the Singapore deal, by my own ambition, that I forgot what mattered. I forgot you. Penthouse and remembered all the ways he had failed her. The missed dinners. The forgotten anniversaries. The calls he had ignored while his wife nearly died. He had found the hospital records eventually. Read the details of her emergency surgery, the notes about how she had been brought in alone. The nurse's comment that no family had been present during her recovery. It had nearly destroyed him. Victoria had tried to comfort him, but he had finally seen her for what she was. Someone who had deliberately kept him distracted, who had scheduled meetings during important dates, who had called him constantly to keep him away from Elena. He had ended their business partnership immediately. The money didn't matter. Nothing mattered except finding Elena and begging her forgiveness. And now, impossibly, here she was. She looked different. Her hair was longer, her style more relaxed, her expression more open. She looked happy in a way he had never seen her look during their marriage. She looked beautiful. The cold shoulder. Elena's first instinct was to run. Her second was to stand her ground. She had run once before. She wasn't running again. She turned back to the French collector, continuing her explanation of the Rembrandt as if her heart wasn't pounding against her ribs. As if the man who had broken her heart wasn't standing 30 feet away, looking at her like she was water and he was dying of thirst. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Adrian start to move toward her. She smoothly excused herself from the collector and moved to the next group of guests, keeping people between them, using the crowd as a buffer. This was her domain now. Her success. Her achievement. She wouldn't let him ruin it. But Adrian was persistent. Every time she moved, he followed. Every time she turned, he was there, getting closer. Finally, inevitably, he caught up to her in front of the Monet she had been studying that morning. Elena. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. She force. Elena had spent months coordinating the exhibition, and tonight was the grand opening. She moved through the gallery, checking each piece one last time, ensuring the lighting was perfect, the temperature controlled, the security in place. This was her element. This was what she had been meant to do before she had given it all up. Elena, you look radiant. Pierre Beaumont, the gallery owner, kissed both her cheeks. Everything is perfect. You've outdone yourself. Thank you, Pierre. I'm just hoping the guests appreciate it as much as we do. Oh, they will. We have everyone coming tonight. Including some last-minute additions from New York. Pierre consulted his tablet. Several major collectors who heard about the exhibition and insisted on being added to the guest list. Elena's stomach tightened slightly. New York. But it was a big city, and the art world was vast. The chances of anyone from her old life being here were slim. She pushed the worry aside and focused on the task at hand. By 7 o'clock, the gallery was filling with guests dressed in elegant evening wear, champagne glasses in hand, voices echoing off the high ceilings. Elena worked the room with practiced grace, discussing provenance and technique, answering questions about the artists, basking in the energy of people who genuinely appreciated beauty. She was explaining the significance of a Rembrandt sketch to a French collector when she felt it. A gaze on her back, heavy and intense, raising the hairs on her neck. Elena turned slowly, scanning the crowd. And then she saw him. Adrian Blackwell stood near the entrance, frozen in place, staring at her as if he had seen a ghost. The man who searched for 6 months. Adrian had spent 6 months looking for Elena. He had hired private investigators, called every contact he had, checked every hospital and hotel. She had vanished completely, as thoroughly as if she had never existed. The guilt had eaten him alive. Every day, he woke up in the empty. 6 months later, Paris. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the Beaumont Gallery, turning the white walls into canvases of gold. Elena stood in front of a Monet, her coffee growing cold in her hand, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. 6 months in Paris had transformed her. Or maybe it had simply allowed her to remember who she had been before Adrian Blackwell had convinced her to forget herself. She wore her hair longer now, loose waves falling past her shoulders instead of the tight bun Mrs. Adrian Blackwell had favored. Her clothes were simpler, more artistic than corporate. Today she wore wide-legged trousers and a silk blouse the color of rust, with her grandmother's vintage watch on her wrist instead of the Cartier Adrian had given her. She looked like herself again. More importantly, she felt like herself. Elena. Marie appeared from the back office, her wild curls barely contained by a silk scarf. The Christie collection is being delivered in an hour. Are you ready for the chaos? Elena smiled, the expression coming easily now. Controlled chaos is my specialty. That's why Pierre was smart enough to hire you. Marie linked her arm through Elena's. Speaking of Pierre, he wants to know if you've reconsidered his nephew's dinner invitation. Still no, Elena said firmly. I'm not interested in dating anyone. It's been 6 months, Sherry. You're allowed to move on. I am moving on. Just not in that direction. Elena turned back to the Monet, studying the way light played across painted water. I'm happy, Marie. For the first time in 3 years, I'm genuinely happy. I don't need a man to complete that. Marie squeezed her arm. Fair enough. But if you change your mind, Jean-Luc makes excellent coq au vin. The gallery opening. 3 weeks later, the Beaumont Gallery was hosting the most important exhibition of the season. European masters on loan from private collections, pieces that rarely saw public display. Adrian walked through the apartment, really looking at it for the first time in months. Something was wrong. Something was missing. The apartment felt empty in a way that had nothing to do with furniture. That's when he found the letter on his study desk, weighted down by a diamond ring that caught the afternoon light and threw accusations across the room. Adrian picked up the letter with hands that had suddenly started shaking. He read it once. Then again. Then a third time, each word sinking into his chest like a knife. Emergency surgery. 16 calls. She had almost died, and he hadn't even known. He looked at his phone, scrolling back through his call log. There they were. 16 missed calls from Elena, all on the same night. The night of their anniversary. The night he had been at dinner with Victoria, celebrating the preliminary Singapore agreement. The night his wife had almost died while he was toasting champagne with another woman. Adrian sank into his desk chair, the letter crumpling in his fist. What had he done? When had he become the kind of man who forgot his own anniversary, who ignored his wife's desperate calls, who kept divorce papers as a backup plan? When had he stopped seeing Elena? He looked at the wedding ring on his desk, at the way the light fractured through the diamond. He had given her that ring on a rooftop in Rome, had promised to love and cherish her, had sworn that she would always come first. He had broken every promise. And now she was gone. They had never been hers anyway. They had belonged to Mrs. Adrian Blackwell, a woman who had never really existed. She called a single number before she left. Her best friend from college, Marie, who had moved to Paris 5 years ago and had been begging Elena to visit. I'm coming to Paris, Elena said when Marie answered. Can I stay with you for a while? Of course, Marie said immediately, hearing something in Elena's voice that made her not ask questions. How long? I don't know. Maybe forever. Elena took one last look at the penthouse, at the life she had tried so hard to make work. Then she walked out the door and didn't look back. The elevator descended 53 floors. With each floor, Elena felt lighter. By the time she reached the lobby, she felt like she could breathe for the first time in 3 years. The empty penthouse. Adrian Blackwell returned from Singapore 4 days later, exhausted but triumphant. The deal was done. Blackwell Industries had just secured its biggest partnership in company history, and he was now one of the wealthiest men in New York. He dropped his suitcase by the door and loosened his tie, already thinking about the shower he desperately needed. The penthouse was dark and quiet, which wasn't unusual. Elena was probably asleep. Actually, when was the last time he had talked to Elena? Before Singapore, certainly. Maybe a week ago? 2 weeks? Adrian frowned, trying to remember. His life had been such a whirlwind of meetings and negotiations that everything else had blurred together. He walked to the bedroom, expecting to find his wife asleep. The bed was made, untouched. Her closet door stood open, and even from the doorway, he could see that half her clothes were gone. Confusion turned to concern. Adrian pulled out his phone and called Elena's number. It went straight to voicemail. A voicemail that was no longer her voice, just a generic robot message. He tried again. Same result. Be terminated when it was no longer convenient. The letter he would never read. Elena sat at Adrian's desk and pulled out a piece of his expensive stationery. Her hands were steady as she began to write. Adrian. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Don't bother looking for me. I don't want to be found. I almost died 3 days ago. Emergency surgery. I called you 16 times. You never answered. You were too busy in Singapore with Victoria to care that your wife was bleeding out on a hospital floor. But you know what? I'm grateful. Because lying in that hospital bed, alone, I finally understood something I should have realized a long time ago. I don't exist to you. I haven't existed for a long time. I'm just an accessory you wear to charity galas, a prop you bring out when you need to present the image of a stable family man. I gave up everything for you. My job, my friends, my dreams, my identity. I molded myself into whatever shape you needed me to be, and it still wasn't enough. I was never enough. You have divorce papers in your desk. I found them. To be used if necessary. Well, consider it necessary now. I'm setting you free, Adrian. Free to spend all your time with Victoria, free to build your empire without a wife who inconveniences you with her existence. And I'm setting myself free too. Free to remember who I used to be before I became invisible. Don't contact me. Don't try to find me. Consider this marriage over. I hope your Singapore deal was worth it. Elena. She folded the letter carefully and left it on his desk, weighted down by her wedding ring. The diamond caught the light one last time, throwing rainbow shadows across the mahogany surface. Walking away. Elena had packed only what she needed: clothes, her passport, the small box of jewelry that had belonged to her grandmother. Everything else, all the designer dresses and expensive shoes and charity gala gowns, she left behind. Ruptured ovarian cyst. We had to do emergency surgery. You're lucky you called when you did. Another hour and... The nurse trailed off, but Elena understood. She could have died. My husband, Elena whispered. Did someone call my husband? The nurse's expression shifted, becoming carefully neutral. We called the number you had listed as your emergency contact. No one answered, but we left several messages. Elena turned her face away, tears burning hot tracks down her cheeks. She had nearly died, and Adrian hadn't even known. Hadn't even cared enough to answer his phone. The discovery. Elena was discharged 2 days later. Adrian never came to the hospital. His assistant, Jessica, had shown up with a change of clothes and a corporate credit card for the medical bills, apologizing profusely on Adrian's behalf. He's in Singapore, Jessica had explained, looking uncomfortable. The deal with Victoria's company, it's at a critical stage. He said he'll be back next week. Next week. As if his wife's emergency surgery was something that could be penciled in for later. Elena had thanked Jessica and sent her away. Then she had called a car service and gone back to the penthouse alone. The apartment was exactly as she had left it 3 days ago. The anniversary dinner still sat in the trash. The candles had burned down to nothing, leaving black marks on the tablecloth. Adrian's study door was open, which was unusual. He normally kept it locked. Elena walked in, not sure what she was looking for, just needing to feel some connection to the man she had married. She found it in the bottom drawer of his desk. Divorce papers. Already drawn up, already prepared by his lawyers. And signed, but dated from 2 months ago. The grounds were listed as irreconcilable differences, and the settlement was more than generous. There was a note paper clipped to the front in Adrian's handwriting, to be used if necessary. If necessary. As if their marriage was a business contract that could. She's helping me close the Singapore deal. But Elena had seen the way Victoria touched Adrian's arm during meetings, the way she laughed at his jokes, the way she looked at him when she thought no one was watching. And she had seen the way Adrian's face lit up when Victoria walked into a room, a brightness that had disappeared from his expression when he looked at Elena. Elena wasn't stupid. She could read the writing on the wall. The breaking point. The anniversary dinner grew colder as the hours passed. Elena sat at the dining table, still wearing the emerald dress she had bought especially for tonight, the one that matched the earrings Adrian had given her on their first anniversary when he still remembered dates that mattered. At 10 o'clock, she finally stood up. Her legs had gone numb from sitting so long. She cleared the table mechanically, scraping the beautiful meal into the trash, washing the dishes that had never been used. She was putting away the last plate when pain struck her abdomen like a lightning bolt. Elena gasped, gripping the counter as another wave of agony rolled through her. Something was wrong. Very wrong. She managed to pull out her phone, her fingers shaking as she called Adrian. The call went to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. The pain intensified, and Elena slid to the kitchen floor, her vision swimming. She dialed 911 with trembling fingers, barely able to give them the address before darkness crept in at the edges of her consciousness. Alone in the white room. Elena woke up in a hospital bed, fluorescent lights too bright above her. A nurse was checking her and when she saw Elena's eyes open, she smiled with practiced sympathy. "You're awake. Good. You gave us quite a scare, Mrs. Blackwell." "What happened?" Elena's voice came out as a croak. Person in the room asked her questions about the paintings, listened to her answers as if they mattered. For 6 months, he had pursued her with an intensity that had taken her breath away. Flowers every morning. Handwritten notes tucked into her bag when she wasn't looking. Surprise trips to Paris to see the Louvre, to Florence to stand before the Sistine Chapel. He had made her feel seen. Important. Loved. The proposal had come on a rooftop in Rome, with the city spread out beneath them like scattered jewels. She had said yes without hesitation, believing that this was the beginning of her fairy tale. She had been so wrong. The slow fade. The change had been gradual. So subtle that Elena hadn't noticed until it was too late. First, Adrian had missed a few dinners. Business crisis, he would say, and she would understand because she knew how important Blackwell Industries was to him. Then he had stopped asking about her day, her interests, her dreams. Their conversations became transactional. "Did you call the caterer? What time is the event? Can you handle this?" Elena had tried to adapt. She had thrown herself into being the perfect wife, attending every charity gala, hosting every business dinner, smiling for every camera. She had abandoned her job at the gallery because Adrian needed her available. She had given up her studio apartment because the penthouse was more appropriate for his status. She had given up everything, piece by piece, until there was nothing left of the woman she used to be. The other woman. Victoria Sterling had entered their lives 8 months ago. Adrian's new business partner, brilliant and beautiful, with sharp ambition that matched his own. Elena had wanted to like her, had tried to befriend her, but Victoria had looked through her as if she were made of glass. And Adrian had started spending more and more time with Victoria. "It's just business," he had said when Elena mentioned how often Victoria called him at night. The invisible wife. The anniversary that never happened. The clock on the marble mantelpiece struck 8, and Elena Martinez Blackwell watched the candlelight flicker across the untouched dinner she had spent hours preparing. The chicken had gone cold. The wine had lost its chill. And her husband, Adrian Blackwell, was nowhere to be found. 3 years. Today marked 3 years since she had walked down the aisle in that ridiculously expensive wedding dress, 3 years since she had promised to love and cherish a man who barely remembered she existed. Elena's phone buzzed for the 10th time that evening. She already knew what it would say before she looked at the screen. Still at the office. Don't wait up. No apology. No mention of their anniversary. Not even a hint that he remembered what today was supposed to mean. She stared at the message until the screen went dark, her reflection ghosting back at her in the black mirror of the phone. When had she become so invisible? When had she transformed from a woman with dreams and ambitions into nothing more than a shadow in Adrian's massive penthouse? The woman she used to be. Elena remembered the girl she had been before Adrian Blackwell swept into her life like a hurricane. She had been working as an assistant curator at a small art gallery in downtown Manhattan, living in a tiny studio apartment that she loved, spending her weekends at museums and her evenings reading about Renaissance painters. She had been happy. Simple, maybe, but happy. Then Adrian had walked into the gallery during a charity auction, all sharp suits and sharper eyes, and everything had changed. He had looked at her like she was the only